Hey everyone, I'm Trevor, and today we're at Disneyland to share with you the things that need to change at Disneyland in the future. So let's get going. This video is kind of going to be like a let's chat video. What do I mean by that? Well, somebody actually asked me, what would you change if you were in charge at Disneyland? And they wanted to know the answer to that question. I thought that'd be a great topic for a video. What are the things, the problems here at Disneyland that I feel like need to change, or things that could be added or done to make Disneyland even better than it already is? And that's what we're here to talk about. And the first thing we're going to talk about is Genie Plus, because Genie Plus and Lightning Lanes are broken. Now, everything I'm about to say is going to be a ringing endorsement for the program, for those of you who are on the fence about buying. But for annual pass holders and anyone trying to save a buck or two that chooses not to purchase Genie Plus, this is a huge problem. So what is the problem? Well, Disney unfairly gives favor to Genie Plus purchasers in ride lines. To understand why this is a problem, we need to flash back to the pre-COVID era when FastPass was a thing. Back then, FastPass was free to every guest in the park, and MaxPass was a paid upgrade that allowed you to make selections on your phone instead of running around the park like a chicken with your head cut off trying to collect tickets with return times. Back then, Disney treated the two lines, Standby and FastPass, equally. They would pull 50% of guests from one line and 50% of guests from the other line, going back and forth. Under Genie Plus, Disney's whole mentality has changed. Now it's like 90% to 10%, and in some cases it's even worse than that. The extreme cases usually involve the ride breaking, because when this happens, guests are given multi-experience passes to come back at a later time throughout the day. When the ride reopens, the Lightning Lane experiences its normal flow of guests and the group of people that couldn't ride earlier. This makes the Lightning Lane longer, and so Disney hyper-prioritizes the Lightning Lane to basically, make it shorter. So much so that they completely ignore the standby line. I'll illustrate with two stories. Once I got in line for Indiana Jones, which is right behind me, and the Lightning Lane got so long that every time the cast member sent guests through the line, she chose Lightning Laners and not standby. I started a timer on my phone, and 15 minutes went by before she took a single person from the standby line. Meanwhile, around 500 guests were sent through the Lightning Lane. A similar situation happened to me at Radiator Springs Races. We got in line when it said it was a 45-minute wait. It moved quickly, and after about 20 minutes, we were probably about 3/4 of the way through the line. Then the ride broke for about 10 minutes, but they never actually closed the ride and instead allowed guests to continue to enter the queue. This backed up the Lightning Lane so much that when they resumed operation, they once again ignored the standby line. For giving the 10-minute breakdown, we ended up waiting a total of 75 minutes, not the 45 that it was posted at. Had the breakdown never happened, we would have gotten on in about 40 minutes or so. But Disney's whole philosophy of who gets to ride drastically changed after the breakdown. Why does this happen? Well, I think it's because of entitled guests that think they somehow deserve royal treatment because they purchased Lightning Lane. And Disney caters to these loud few who ruin it for everybody else. Now, the number of people I've seen complain online both about the cost and the waits for Genie Plus are ridiculous. First off, the cost isn't that bad. Yes, it used to be free, but there's no putting that cat back in the bag. Even so, Knott's Berry Farm's Fast Lane costs more than $100 a person, and Universal is just as bad, if not worse. I thought about purchasing their Express Pass this past July, and I was told that it would be an additional $199 a person. Yes, on top of my ticket cost. This did not include admission. It was just Express Pass. So Disney's $30 is sounding pretty cheap by comparison, don't you think? But the real kicker here is the entitled behavior that because you paid for it, you somehow deserve to walk onto the ride right away without any wait at all. And that's just not how it works. Even at Universal, with as much as it costs, if standby is 60 minutes, Express will take you 30 minutes. At Disneyland, if standby is 60 minutes, Lightning Lane is like 5 to 10 minutes for most rides. Now, I'm not saying that Disney needs to get rid of Genie Plus or go back to the free FastPass system. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that it works so much better when they treated both lines equally. And that's what this is really about, because Disney treats guests that don't buy Genie Plus as second-rate citizens. They paid a lot of money to visit the parks too, and just because they don't want to pay for Genie Plus doesn't mean that they should be shunned and ignored by cast members. So the first thing that I would like to change going forward is moving back to the 50-50 split, no matter the circumstances, so that purchasing Genie Plus becomes an optional service and not something that you feel compelled to purchase because Disney makes your life miserable without it. The second thing that I would change is actually also related to Genie Plus. I would add in a second validation scanner. Now, this is something that they have at Walt Disney World. What do I mean? Well, when you scan into a lightning lane, there's this little pole with a circle on it, and you scan your ticket or your magic band to prove that you have a lightning lane reservation for that attraction. And then you enter the line, and there's actually quite a bit of a queue, and in some of the rides, it's a very long wiggle before you reach the merge point between Standby and Lightning Lane, where, you know, both guests come together. And so what I've seen happen a lot of times is people will enter the Standby line because they don't have a Lightning Lane, and then halfway through, they'll cross the rope over into the Lightning Lane, and because there's no second validation scanner at the merge point, they get away with it, and they can basically enter the Lightning Lane without actually paying for Genie Plus. Where at Walt Disney World, they have this second scanner at the merge point that means that if people cut the line, they still have to prove that they have a Lightning Lane before the merge. Adding in the second validation scanner would eliminate this system cheating. Speaking of park updates that I feel like Disneyland needs that Walt Disney World has, we need better security booth scanners. And what I mean by that is we still have this old archaic system of cast members checking every crevice and pocket of your bag. And at Walt Disney World, most people can just leave their bags alone and they walk through this bigger scanner that is designed to check only significant, dense blocks of metal. For instance, like umbrellas. You have to pull those out of your bag and hold them in front of you when you walk through these scanners. But otherwise, you don't need to go through bag check. You don't need to open up your bag every pocket. They don't have to take a stick and examine every single corner of your bag. You just walk right through the scanner, and probably about 80% of the time, you just get to go straight through without any issues. This significantly cuts down on the amount of manpower that they need because they only have to check about 20% of people's bags instead of 100% of them. Plus, it speeds up the security process, improves guest satisfaction. It's overall a win-win, except for that it costs money. And of course, Disney is all about cutting spending and not increasing it. Did you know that rope drop at Walt Disney World isn't a mad dash to beat the crowd to that one popular attraction that everybody wants to go to? It's an organized process that begins with guests slowly entering areas around the park in stages that are led and directed by cast members, so that when the park opens, the line remains neat and orderly, and whoever showed up first actually is at the front of the line. Here at Disneyland, as soon as the rope drops, the cast member gets out of the way and the herd disperses in a frenzy. You could have been standing in the front of the line at Frontierland entrance in order to go to Rise of the Resistance, but the crowd pushes past you and runs around you to get there long before you can, erasing all the effort you put into showing up right when the gates open. This is unfair to guests with strollers, elderly party members, or those with mobility aids because they simply can't keep up. The solution is to send a single person on ahead, of course, but this causes frustration with guests behind you as 15 people suddenly show up that weren't there before. Or the rest of the party is so behind that one individual is now deep in the queue when they arrive, so they have to push past everyone. Or that one individual has to let others pass while they wait for their group to get there. It's one of the main reasons we don't show up until 8:01 a.m. usually, because I just got tired of dealing with the frenzy. Once again, Walt Disney World's system is superior and leads to a much better guest experience. The next thing I'd do is I'd fill all the empty and forgotten spaces around the park with attractions. Currently, Star Wars Launch Bay sits empty, the Tomorrowland Theater that once showed movie previews or other short films isn't being used for anything, and of course the Fantasyland Theater behind me has been empty since January. Now they do have small plans to use this a little bit throughout the month of February, but even so, there's no plans announced after that. And the Hyperion Theater over at DCA has been empty since August after only receiving a 2-month-long show. Otherwise, it's pretty much been closed since COVID. The 2 stages by Monsters, Inc. aren't being utilized, and all of this stuff could have things in them that take guests from other areas of the park and alleviate congestion. Now, Disney did recently announce that they plan to increase park capacity, and there's a few ways that they can do that, and the first is doing just this, putting attractions back into these empty spaces. And the second is with expanding the park through their Disneyland Forward program that's been being talked about for a few years, but it looks like they finally might see some forward progress, if you see what I did there. Opening up these spaces to fill guests for attractions, again, alleviates these longer lines throughout the park. Why hasn't Disney done anything with them so far? Well, Bob Chapek worked Disney into a hole, and Bob Iger is having to fix his mistakes. But the way he's choosing to do that is by cutting costs. More on this in a little bit, but the heart of the matter is Disney doesn't want to pay extra cast members and actors to operate these spaces, and so they sit empty. Speaking of vacant spaces, the track for the rocket rods is still lying around Tomorrowland like a constant reminder of a failed attraction, one that required the removal of a beloved attraction to put in. Yes, I'm talking about the Tomorrowland Transit Authority PeopleMover. Yes, it would be money to tear down all the track and reconfigure the ride for the PeopleMover. But it's something that I believe needs to be done to refresh this outdated land and to add an attraction to the park. The space is already there, they just need to spend the money to make it happen. Now let's talk about a topic that undoubtedly many of you are waiting to see if I would bring up, and that is going to be the reservation system. Do I have a solution to the problem? No, I don't. But from a guest perspective, I would like to get rid of them. For years, Disney operated without them. They were used during COVID to restrict the number of people that came into the park, primarily because of government requirements on the amount of people allowed within a certain number of space and all that sort of thing. But social distancing is long over, and reservations are still here. Why? Well, that's because reservations are used for more than just limiting the number of guests that are allowed into the park. In fact, the parks seem busier today than they ever have been in the past. Yet pass holders constantly run out of reservations, and day ticket guests experience this problem from time to time as well. Why are there no reservations, meaning that some guests can't come in, and yet the park has never reached capacity before in the past, and yet never felt this full? That's because spontaneity is gone. Guests are now locked into a certain date, and specifically with pass holders, you can't just choose not to come. If you have a reservation and you no-show, Disney penalizes the pass holder. Too many penalties, and Disney will lock you out for a month, meaning you can't visit at all. In the past, a pass holder could just decide that they feel like going to Disneyland today and show up. This led to guests not really thinking about Disney a whole lot, except when they were in the mood for it. But now, in order to go, you have to plan at least a month ahead of time, and weekends disappear so quickly that pass holders often have all 4, if not 6, of their reservations already planned out. This means pass holders are much more intentional about going now, and so they show up a lot more than they used to. Disney likes this, of course, because it means that there are more people in the park. More visitors means more spending. From a business standpoint, Disney makes more money with reservations, and so they're never going to get rid of it as much as we would like to see it disappear. Next, I think Disneyland sorely needs a value hotel. At Walt Disney World, there are value hotels that cost about $180 a night, moderate hotels that cost about $350 a night, and deluxe hotels that cost about $500 or more a night. Disneyland has 3 hotels, and all are priced at the deluxe level, though no such terms are used out here. Yes, there's a whole bunch of good neighbor hotels just outside the Harbor Boulevard entrance, but none of these hotels offer perks or benefits at the resort. And frankly, after staying at a Disney hotel, the cost is just not worth it in my opinion. Perhaps the reason that Disney doesn't have a value hotel is because of these good neighbor hotels, or maybe some agreement with the city that impacts tourism, but then offer some of these hotels the early entry benefit for partnership agreements, or maybe give some hotels that are close to the park exclusive entrances, like the Candy Cane Inn. The whole hotel structure out here needs to be reconsidered to make on-site options more affordable or with better benefits that justify the cost. Let's talk about some more things that I would add to the parks if I could. How about a ride? What's one ride that I would love to see come to Disneyland? An existing ride at Walt Disney World that I love is Flight of Passage, but I'm not even going to really get started on the upcoming Avatar experience because that word experience kind of leaves a lot to be desired. It didn't say a ride. In fact, some of the rumors that I've read suggest that the Redwood Creek Challenge Trail might be retrofitted to be Pandora themed, and I would be okay with that so long as they leave the kids theme area there. If they completely rip out all the kids stuff, I'd be kind of disappointed, honestly. There's a little bit of concern with this approach because I do see the Redwood Creek Challenge Trail coming under refurbishment beginning on March 4th, and as of, I think it is March 26th, which is the end of the refurb calendar right now, it's still closed. There's no reason for the Redwood Creek Challenge Trail to be closed this time of year, especially through spring break, so I feel like they might be beginning some sort of retrofitting. There's been no major announcements, no news, not even a rumbling or really a rumor, so I don't know about this one, but that's neither here nor there. Existing rides aside, I would love to see a Lion King attraction. Now, I don't just mean a show, because we've had that, we just had that, they got one at Walt Disney World, but I mean like a roller coaster experience. I think that would be great, based off of the Stampede scene. One where guests are racing down into the ravine, and that's the drop, and then there's twists and turns as you're dodging the wildebeest, and then you could even have like a backwards scene where you're tossed back in by Scar, and all that sort of thing. I really think that that would be great. Of course, I don't think that's ever going to happen. It's definitely unlikely. It's just something that, I would like to see if you're asking. So if I'm being realistic, however, the only existing areas that could house another ride within Disneyland itself is this big area of land over by Frontierland, but it is mostly water. I mean, that doesn't mean that they couldn't solve that issue, but there is a huge chunk of land. If you look at Google Earth, you can see a pretty decent footprint, like the size of Big Thunder almost, that they could put something over there. Of course, over here in Disney California Adventure, where we're currently standing, there's a huge parking lot behind Cars Land, and part of that is going to be used for the new Avengers attraction that is going in right next to the Avengers Vault below the Quinjet. But I don't know how much of that parking lot is going to be used or taken up with that attraction. There's a lot of space back there. They could easily add something else, in my opinion, that's either Avengers or Cars Land themed. So if I was to remove a ride, what ride would I choose to remove? Well, Finding Nemo would be the obvious choice, because it's one of the rides that I ride the least, and I also feel like it is less liked by a lot of people. But removing either it or Autopia would be hard because of the monorail being intertwined through the area, so you couldn't really replace it with anything particularly tall. Like, you couldn't put Tron there, as much as I actually do enjoy Tron over at Walt Disney World. A lot of people have mixed feelings about it, but I like it. A case could be made for eliminating the Fantasyland Theater that we talked about earlier, and replacing it entirely, or putting like a larger attraction there. Otherwise, I do feel that Disneyland makes good use of every available space, given the tiny amount of land that they had to start with. So it is kind of good as it is. Food I would like to see more of is going to be the Asian options. So right now at Disney California Adventure, they have the Lunar New Year Festival going on, and so a lot of the food booths have Asian-inspired foods, and it's my favorite time of year to come to DCA because of those foods. I think they're phenomenal, and I wish they had some more Asian options. I do know that they are bringing Din Tai Fung to Downtown Disney, and so I'm looking forward to that. But it would be nice to have more like a Chinese option over in Disneyland as well. And the last thing that I want to talk about is bringing back some of the Disney magic. Now, this is more of a Walt Disney World problem than a Disneyland problem, because we still have a lot of our entertainment like this. The Five and Dime crew is about to come up here, and they're going to go to this stage over here and perform some live music. So I was going to talk here, but we're going to actually relocate while they perform. So what do I mean when I say that I would like to bring back some Disney magic? I think this is actually one of the most important aspects or changes that need to happen here at Disney. And that is that I just feel like a lot of the special moments that used to make Disneyland what it is have sort of disappeared. Quietly so, but they have nonetheless. And some folks still report occurrences of this magic, but I feel like it is far less frequent than it used to be. What do I mean? Of course, I'm talking about the special moments that cast members make happen just to make someone's day. I've been asked to say a pirate code at Pirates of the Caribbean and then given a private boat to enjoy the ride. And I've been flagged aside by a cast member when I was wearing a birthday button, and I was taken to a alternate entrance for Toy Story Midway Mania to skip the line. Even things like birthday cupcakes when dining at a table service restaurant are just gone. They're things that used to happen, but they've gone by the wayside. These little touches that make Disney what it is. The company is nickel and diming these small things out to reduce costs. But some of these things aren't even cost related, yet they're still gone. It used to be that if you were celebrating something, wearing a pin was a sure way to have magic heaped upon you. And I don't know if that was just, someone else has ruined it for everyone because people cheat the system and lie and wear pins even when they're not celebrating anything, just to get free stuff. I don't know. And, so Disneyland stopped it. I know that stuff happens more often than not. They used to provide a lot of free things, and then people would abuse them, and then they take them away. And it's frustrating for everyone else that was, being honorable and just wanting those special moments to happen. And I don't know if this is just like, cast members not necessarily caring anymore, or if it's Disney as a corporation that told them to stop these things. I feel like I haven't seen that special twinkle in a while, and either it's just not happening for me, but I don't know. I wish that they would bring back a lot of the Disney magic. And that's it for our time here today, sharing with you everything that I feel needs to change at Disneyland. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe button, and let me know down in the comments which of the points you enjoyed the most. Then click this video to keep watching. Thanks for watching, and we will see you again next time.